Uh, Joy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ken's better half, and happy to be here today. I've been an educator in El Dorado County since the 1980s, and Sac State, and I'm retired now, but happy to join Ken by his side in this latest endeavor of his. It's nice to
Yeah,
see you.
great. And Joan, I'm so glad you're able to join us. And you and Living Room Conversations are going to play an important role in this event. So introduce yourself, please.
So I'm Joan Blades. I am a co-founder of Living Room Conversations, which we co-founded in 2010. So we've been having all sorts of conversations for over a decade now. And it's quite wonderful, the people I get to meet in this process and the other partners.
Yeah. Thank you, Joan. And next we have Tina.
I am Tina Shaw, and for profession, I'm a leadership and team development coach. And I got involved with Braver Angels because my husband and I have very different political views, and it caused a huge strain in our relationship. And I was really interested in how we can have civil conversations and look to understand rather than changing other people's minds. So that's me. And I'm in Cameron Park.
Good. Fantastic. Great, Tina. Thank you. And look forward to seeing you on the 29th. Brian, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Brian Veerkamp, a lifelong fifth generation community member here in El Dorado County, prior board of supervisor, member of the Placerville Kiwanis Club, a board member for Marshall Hospital, Community Foundation, and maybe a few more. But glad to be a part of this project and looking for improvement and better relations amongst many of our people and groups. And sent Ken some information on a civility workshop that Dr. Vicki Barber put together some years back, and the notes and minutes. So anyway, we've got some starting ground, and some of the people are still around that were involved in that also. So well, I'm looking forward to the 29th.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Brian, Paul, and I had a conversation with Vicki this morning because we wanted to have her tell us directly what that initiative was about and what they learned about it. But it was really done for many of the same reasons that we're doing this now. But she has some great insights and very supportive of what we're doing. So that's great. Mary, you're maybe the furthest away from all of us.
Yeah, I know. I think we have a Braver Angel coming from San Diego too. But yeah, I've become a traveling, what do they call it? Traveling angel. I got involved with Braver Angels sort of by accident, and I went to an event and I thought I would only stay for a little bit, and I got hooked. I met people that I really disagreed with, but I couldn't believe how articulate and wonderful they were. And I thought, wow, I need to have a conversation. And so we've been real involved. And so now I've been moderating events all over the country in person and on Zoom. And I've been an educator for 40 some years, and I still work at Concordia University, but I did my work K-12.
And Mary and Carlos, who's going to come join us in just a moment, he's there with the bright red Braver Angels in the background, are going to do a really cool interactive activity towards right after lunch. And I won't say too much more about it, but also Mary has done some amazing work with students around the country, helping them learn how to have important conversations with their peers and with adults around controversial topics. And that will be an option that the students who are coming to this event will have to learn how to do that kind of thing, and to have their teachers learn how to do it with them. Thank you, Mary. And Tab, I haven't met you before, but it's great to see you. Oops. You're still muted, Tab.
Sorry about that. Hi, it's Tab Berg. I was a very, very active Braver Angels in the Sacramento area. I'm a bright red I've moderated about a dozen or so different and organized a dozen or so different Braver Angels events here in Sacramento, and just want to help with that bridging the divide efforts. And professionally, I work in politics for the last 20 years, so I'm buried underneath a lot of this controversy.
Well, Tab, thanks for joining us and being part and offering to facilitate. It would be really helpful to have you there. Nicodemus, you and I go back a number of years because you and I worked together at West Ed, and then fortuitously we ran into each other again and with the work you're doing in El Dorado County. So introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good to see you. Good to see everyone as well. My name is Nicodemus Ford. I like to say that I'm an emerging Black farmer, restorative justice practitioner, and natural building enthusiast. My work in El Dorado County over the last 4 years was centered around bringing school systems together to work cooperatively together. The past 3 years have launched a project called Listen and Leap, which are listening and healing circles for middle school students. And we take that information and not only heal and work with middle school students, but also use that information to inform how we create more engaging, loving, caring, and school environments for kids. So good to see everybody, and thanks for letting me be part of this work.
Great. Thanks, Nicodemus. Great to see you. Carlos, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Carlos Hernandez. I reside in San Francisco and also on the island of Kauai. I'm the red chair. How about that? A red chair in San Francisco as a Hispanic. Also the Red Leader Pacific region. And for me, it's not about conversations. What? Really? It's about safety. Imagine being a Trump supporter living in San Francisco. So that's why I'm in Braver Angels. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Paul.
So I'm Paul Zapatini. Lived in El Dorado County for 44 years. Not as long as Brian, but I'm working on it. Former president of the El Dorado Community Foundation, other nonprofits, including Placerville, Kiwanis. And when Ken introduced me to this concept, it was just something that had to get done. So that's why I agreed to help out with this, and I'm very much looking forward to finding solutions through conversation, and look forward to meeting you all in person on the 29th.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And Wynette, I think you can hear us. I wonder if you can say a few words about yourself as you're driving.
Hello, everyone. My husband and I, we are organic farmers in Sutter County. Today, I'm en route to my hometown of Yuma, Arizona, in hopes of having dinner with my parents tonight. So I can't take time off the road. I have to get there by a certain time. So I apologize for the background. My role here today is that I also serve as the co-chair of the Sacramento Braver Angels Alliance. And so I'm looking forward to the 29th and being there to serve the El Dorado County community and bringing people together. So thank you. I'll just be listening today.
Great. Thanks, Wynette. Alyssa, you're next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa Inks, and I am Joy's daughter and Ken's stepdaughter, actually. So nice to meet everybody. My background is pretty much, I started out in HR at Marshall Hospital, which I think I was there 14 years. I got super bored working there, so I decided to go back to school and get my master's, and now I'm a school counselor. I absolutely love it. I would do this work for free, and I'm happy to be part of the group.
Great, thanks, Alyssa. That's great. So I'm going to jump right in and get started with the presentation because I really want you to feel comfortable in what you're going to be asked to do. I also want to say this at the outset, that if you have reactions or comments or suggestions about how we could tweak this a little bit, I really would welcome it. We still have time to make some adjustments. If it would require a longer explanation, I'd ask that you send that to me in email or say you want to talk to me on the phone, and I'll call you and we can talk about it. But if it's just a little tweak, then either raise your hand like this or hit the raise your hand under reactions, I think it is down below. So I'm going to share my screen. And bring up a keynote presentation. Can you all see that? Okay. So this, I just wanted to say at the outset that this PowerPoint document and a detailed facilitator's guide in Word you'll get via email. And the reason I didn't send it in advance is because I may make some modifications to it based on this call today. And I wanted to make sure that if I did make those changes, you have the current version. So the key details about the event, it's at the Cameron Park Community Center, Thursday, September 29th. If you look that up on, and find their website, you'll get the address. It's on Country Club Drive, just off of Highway 50. We expect to have about 120 participants representing these 9 sectors. And each of you at the end of the day for an important activity has been assigned to one of those sectors. And I may have tried to do the best I could and assign you to the right group. But if for some reason you think you need to be or want to be in a different one, that's something that we still have time to do. So the major goals of this event, we want people to come away with a clearer sense of the personal and organizational impacts of the divides that we all experience, or we sometimes refer to it as polarization. Participants will learn about and briefly experience the benefits of a few depolarization strategies. And then really importantly is groups will leave with action plans that name people who will at least initially lead the effort, the change effort, identify the challenges faced, the goals they have to achieve, and the resources they need after the convening, because it's really important. And a number of people said, well, this sounds like a great event, but why do you expect anything to change? And the answer is because you're going to help them come up with an action plan, at least the beginning steps of an action plan, for about 45 minutes at the end of the day. And so we'll be going through that in just a little bit. So the first activity you're going to host is one that operates along the lines of what Living Room Conversations does. And I learned about them maybe a year ago, and that's the organization that Joan co-founded. And I may ask her to step in here briefly to elaborate a little bit on it. What Living Room Conversations does, they have conversation guides on their website. So if you wanted to have a conversation about something, that might not be very controversial, like abortion or gun rights or who knows what, they have guides. And I was being facetious, of course, about being controversial, but they welcome the idea of people coming together who have different perspectives, and through the use of these conversation agreements, have civil conversations, and people listen to each other and leave those conversations feeling like they learned something, and they still like the people they had the conversations with. So I'm not going to, let me just, actually, Joan, do you want to say a word about the use of conversation agreements before I move forward in the presentation?
I guess the one thing I would note is it's the conversation agreements start, but we have over 100 specific conversation guides, and it's that container that creates a way to go and have a good conversation. They're intimate conversations, typically 6 people. And you think about balance, and it depends on what conversation you chose, the balance. And it's that combination that really creates the environment where people listen to each other.
And I just have to say, first, I've had first-hand experience with it. I spent an hour with Becca Curl, who is a colleague and now is the, I guess, executive director, Joan.
Yes.
She did and you folks do this wonderful 1-hour training for what you refer to as hosts, not facilitators. And we'll say more about that in a minute. But I started hosting podcast conversations called Courageous Conversations About Our Schools around really controversial topics like critical race theory and whether schools are indoctrinating students, the role teachers should play when it comes to gender and sexual identity. And we always begin by having people read these conversation agreements. And the conversations have been wonderful. People listen to each other and are respectful and come away, I think, thinking about what they heard and learned from other people. So we're going to use this, and you're going to play a role in using them. So what people will see at the event in the morning for this activity are these instructions. And the first one is that you form groups of 4 plus a host. And they use the term host, which I really like rather than facilitator, because imagine having a conversation with people around whatever topic it might be in your living room. You're not a facilitator, you're hosting it. You may have food there. And what they urge hosts to do is to participate. And so I want to encourage, and I think Joan would too, urge you to participate in the conversation that you're going to have with the 4 other people in your group. So what you need to do is you'll be sitting with your sector, is you need to put your hand up and let people know that you are the host, and you need to find 4 other people to sit with you. And if the numbers don't quite work out and there's a group of 3, that's fine. If it's 5, it becomes a little problematic because not everyone will get as much time to speak. But if you end up with 3, it just allows you to spend a little more time with your group. Participants read the conversation agreements, and the way to do that, they'll all have a copy of it in their hands, is you go back up, and each of you will read it. So I might ask Mary, would you read the first one? And she says, be curious and listen to understand. I might go to Nicodemus. He would say, show respect and suspend judgment. And you read one, and since there are more than 5, you just ask someone else to read the last couple ones. Joan, please interrupt me at any time if you want to.
I would say on the instructions, it's really nice to know the total amount of time you have. And the own and guide the conversation is for everybody in that conversation to feel ownership. So the host really is just a participant that has done it before. Sometimes they haven't, though. And it's just the guide is enough of a ask the questions and puts everyone in the space where people are actually really good at following the conversation agreements once they've reflected on them at the very beginning.
So the next one is that you have to assign or identify a timekeeper. And I kind of recommend that you find someone in your group that can do it rather than you, because you're trying to listen and pay attention and make sure that the thing's going well. And what I find, if I'm also keeping time, I sometimes forget to look at my timer. But timekeeping in these conversations is really important, because as we know, people get really invested in these conversations. And what often happens is people go on a bit too long. And if you establish that we're only going to be speaking for 2 minutes, doesn't mean people won't go on too long. But what is important to do, can you see me? I'm not seeing myself in here, is the timekeeper, if they're using a phone, is to just politely put it up, let people know they're getting near the end of their 2 minutes, and maybe to raise a hand if it goes on a few seconds longer. And Joan, do you want to say anything about how you deal with the potential problem if someone just says, I got to keep going?
You know, I've never had someone that didn't find, it's like, try and find a time to wrap up, and people do. It's hard to imagine in a group like this that people wouldn't honor that. The other thing I'd say is with the phone, so that the timekeeper isn't feeling like they have to really pay attention to their timing, if you can have it just make a quiet noise at the 2-minute mark, then everybody hears it. You know, there's not a big ooga or weird sound, but something quiet and nice that it's a
Yeah.
reminder.
Terrific. So that's a really important thing. And, you know, part of what I think what I'm hoping you're learning about this and what the participants will learn is when they decide to do this on their own with colleagues, if they have a topic and they use this, is understand the value of it, how to do it. It's not that hard, but it's really valuable if you want to have a conversation around a tough topic with people who have different perspectives. So round one, typically what, this is really important because I just want you to know, Joan, that we're not skipping over a really important step. Usually the first question in the round one question is a personal question. And the ones I've used when I talk to people about schools and, you know, critical race theory is to say, what's a memory you have of a teacher that stands out that was really positive? Everyone goes around for 2 minutes and describes that. And by the end of it, people are sort of feeling like, oh, I had a great teacher too, or I liked hearing about that. It's starting with something that's personal and meaningful, where people have a sense of common ground. We're not doing that here because we would have already done something like that earlier in the day. I'm going to ask people to stand up in pairs and respond to 2 questions, and I want all of you to do it with someone there. The first question is, what do you love to do when you're not working? And the second one is, what do you love about living in El Dorado County? And each person will have about 3 minutes to do that. So that will already happen, although it won't happen necessarily with the same people in your group. But just for time's sake, we're skipping that. But it's a really important part of the living room conversations format.
I see one person, Tina is asking about if there are going to be rooms to go to for the breakouts. And I guess my question is, I think what she's pointing to is it can get loud, though often there's a lot of listening going on, so it's not as loud as you expect. So, you know, just what kind of space we're in matters.
Yeah.
To think about that for a moment, how big the tables are. Are we going to be putting groupings of chairs?
You know, I'm glad you raised that, Joan. I think what I want to suggest, since this will be happening in a big auditorium and it may be a little noisy, is that the facilitators ask people to pull their chairs up and sit in a circle, not around the table, but aside, so you're really pretty close to each other and you can hear each other and it's a little more intimate.
Okay, yeah, I just thinking about that is helpful.
Yeah. I
advising
hadn't thought about that, but it would, if you're at these big round tables and you're speaking across and it's noisy, it won't work very well. So grab your tables and sit knee to knee, the 5 of you.
And Nicodemus is asking if outside is an option.
I'm going to say not for this, only because we have such a tight time schedule. I worry about the extra time. If it turns out that it's really noisy and it's so noisy that it can't be done, then yes. And I'll just say something up at the front, like, because we will have done something already with everyone meeting in pairs. Carlos, you wanted to comment on that?
Oh, what are the considerations if folks have COVID/social distancing needs?
Well, if they have COVID, they shouldn't come.
No, I mean, excuse me, COVID safety.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure what the proper protocol should be these days. So if someone has a recommendation, that's not something we've talked about. We have a planning meeting tomorrow. Brian will be there and Paul and we can discuss it and try to come up with a good answer to that.
Thank you.
I presume people who have a COVID safety concern would come wearing masks. For
I would
their own
think.
protection.
Yeah, but that's right. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe in the final reminder we send out to people, if you have a concern, this is going to be indoors, and if you have a concern about COVID, we urge you to wear a mask, but not, people will not be required to wear masks. Okay, I'm going to continue. The second, so the first round questions, everyone, the 4 people you're with and yourself have 2 minutes to answer this questions. So where are you currently seeing or experiencing divisions? And so you might look to someone who's ready to go and call on them, and they have 2 minutes, start the timer. And when they get done, there's no answer conversation about that. You just go to the next person and you go until all 5 of you have answered the question. And then you move to round 2, the round 2 question, which is how have the divisions affected you personally and your organization? Again, 2 minutes to respond to that. When you're done with that, you will have about 3 minutes for people to just reflect on that process. And whoever wants to speak up, not everyone has to say something. You don't want anyone going on too long, or you won't have time for everyone to speak. But we weren't recommending that you keep time for that, but just see if there's a few things that people would like to say about the process. Paul?
So it might be good to tell the people what the 2 questions are in advance, because there's going to be some overlap in these questions and answers. And if they can think about, we're going to be asking you 2 questions, here's the first one, here's the second one, so that they can kind of contemplate and be prepared to answer.
Yeah, you're right. They might hear the first one and start getting into the second one. So that's a good tip that all of you might want to tell people. So I'm going to read, there's going to be 2 questions, and here they are. Joan, do you agree with that approach?
Yeah, I mean, with a normal living room conversation, everybody's able to read the whole guide ahead of time if they wish.
Yeah, so
and people are typically inspired by each other as it happens.
Yeah,
So,
I think I'm going to have a slide like this up for everyone to see too. So that would solve that problem. And then after that, Becca Curl's going to take a few minutes to debrief with the whole group, all 120 people. And host, this is an important thing for you to know, will be asked to share, as she said, I like this proviso, in one breath. In other words, really short, an observation and or a question from their group. So if something came up in your group that was kind of interesting, a question about the process, or I really like this aspect of the way we had that conversation, you might raise your hand and Becca could call on you, and in a breath, just say, someone in our group really liked using the time limits, because I liked using it because it kept me from losing track of time and going on too long, whatever. Okay. So any questions at all? That's activity 1. And essentially this whole thing that you're facilitating will be broken down into 2 activities. We just finished the first, and we're going to move on in a moment to the second activity. It's really important. But
is the logistical
Carol.
question.
Yes,
Yeah, the second piece, when you're talking about your personal or in your organizational, both of those are, you have to speak to in 2 minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, that's true.
So what I'm wondering is if the 2 minutes could be after, just in terms of visually seeing the 2 minutes after personal. There was see how.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Then if you put it at the end of the sentence, it looks like it's for both. And then the other thing I was wondering is, before that 3 minutes for reflection, if there was a group timekeeper who could say, okay, now it's time for, or whatever, if that's necessary, I don't know, but to know we're transitioning to the reflection or whatever, some kind of transition. Thank you.
Terrific. There we go. Great, thank you. Okay, second activity. The thing I want to emphasize with all of you, but also at the event, that unless the people at the event leave with a plan and and hopefully someone that's going to help lead the plan and keep people on track. This event probably won't make much of a difference, at least in the long term. So this is really a kickoff event. So what happens, where will you go next? That's not a question for you. It's a question for the people at the event and the sectors that they're involved with. So the next screen are the facilitator assignments. So each of you should see your name somewhere on there. Healthcare, I think the one person on the call is Tina. Dan, I had you in education, Mary, and Alyssa in education group. The education group, by the way, is the largest. I think, Paul, what do we have, about 22 people?
I think we're up to 24.
Okay, we're up to 24. That's not including students. It's as educators, teachers, administrators, county office folks in all kinds of capacities. Business, Carlos, we have you there now, and we don't yet have another facilitator and may not. So you're going to be doing a solo there, and I'm sure you'll do a great job. With youth, Nicodemus, you've been doing great work with youth in the county, along with, you'll be there with Joy and Delcy. And then the faith-based group, Becca suggested that would be a great place for you, Joan, so that's where we put you. And Sushila is Mertens is a colleague of yours, and we're not yet sure if she's going to be able to attend, but Wynette, we have you there. And then in public safety, Tab, we have you there. I hope that's all right. I think I got some of these recommendations from Carlos. Brian, I just wanted to make a point tomorrow in our planning meeting. Public safety group is currently pretty small, and we want to see if we can expand that group. It's now about 4 or 5 people. We want to see if we can get that up to maybe closer to 10 or 12. And I realize it's a tough time, obviously, for the fire people in particular, but if we can get those numbers up and have those coming, invite some of their colleagues, that would be great. And then nonprofit, we have Paul and Becca, and the community group. We have you, Cheryl, and I just sort of guessed at that. So I didn't necessarily want to have both you and Dan in education, but I'm hoping the community group would be okay.
Yes, that or faith-based, either of those two. So community's fine.
Okay. And then government, Brian, we have you there. This is also a pretty large group. We have current mayors, former mayors, people from South Lake Tahoe, Placerville, on the Board of Supervisors and so forth. And Debbie Groyer, and Carlos, is Debbie a colleague of yours, or is she, Joan, a colleague of yours?
David Grower is a colleague who will be flying in from San Diego.
Okay. Okay, great. And that's right. And she was not able to make this session
Correct.
today. Okay. If you have any concerns or questions about that, let me know offline. So here's the activity that you're going to facilitate. The first step is just to encourage your group to move to a breakout room. We have breakout rooms in this facility, and by the time we have the event, we'll be able to put up a slide that says, you know, the education group is going to go to the room number 2 in the back, and they'll be able to close the door, or there's a couple of classrooms there. So we will have room assignments, but your job is to gather your group that you're sitting with and try to herd them into that room as quickly as possible so you can get started. Because if people start getting up and moving and they go over and grab some refreshments or start a conversation, it may be 5 or so minutes before you get started. So just try to get people into the room. If you're staying where you are, then I think you want to gather people together and either around a table or away from a table in a circle. And that's really important. I just know the tendency of some participants, sometimes having been a teacher myself with a lot of adults, is that people will sit in the back, and it's sort of a signal that they aren't going to be actively involved. And so make sure that you get a nice arrangement with the people in your group. Now, if the group is large, like education and government, I'd like you to ask if they would like to split up into smaller groups, like South Lake Tahoe versus Western Slope, or county and city government might say, you know, we don't interact or cross paths that much. It'd be better for us to meet on our own, or fire versus law enforcement, something like that. Or by school district, the education group's large, and they may say, we want to go off and do something for Buckeye Unified or for Placerville Unified. Or they might just all say, for now, let's just stay together and figure out kind of where we're going. So I'm sorry about this. I'm gonna disconnect this. And the red line is really important, that if you have more than one facilitator in your group, which most of you do, it's really important to take detailed notes and share them with me before you leave at the end of the day. Because Paul and I want to know roughly what happened, what the plans are, most importantly, who has volunteered to be the lead for the group. Because what Paul and I are going to do is meet with all of those leads a few weeks later, and then continue to meet with them over time, so we can problem solve, share stories, and really monitor progress over time. And if we don't know who they are, it might be hard to track them down. Okay, the first question is, what are some of the common divides that people experience within your sector? Political, personal, cultural, philosophical, and how do they impact your work? Lack of trust, for example, poor communication, staff turnover, low morale, inability to collaborate. See if possible, see if the group can prioritize the list of challenges. So you might say, raise your hand if you know trust is really an important challenge for you, or and see if you can come up with a way to prioritize these challenges. And by the way, all the participants will have a copy of a next steps guide with this information on it, so you don't have to print it out yourself, because you'll have a copy and all the people in your group will have these questions with them. And then the second question is, what steps do you want to take to bridge the divides in your sector? And these options will all be listed out in their one-page guide, but I'll let you read them. One of the key things in red there is that they identify someone in that group that will lead the effort and be a contact person, at least initially. But questions like, who else in your sector needs to be involved in this effort? And how will we include them? Do we want to have a convening of our own? What obstacles are you likely to face? So it's just the beginning of forming an action plan of what's going to happen when you leave the event. And yeah, Mary.
I was wondering if we could maybe buy those giant Post-it notes. We can put it on a wall, and we could record ideas.
Yes. Good idea. So posters, like the 3M posters, you could just.
Yeah, they're like giant poster paper. Sometimes they have lines. I mean, otherwise, if that wasn't available, I would probably just have my laptop and take notes. So because I think there's a lot here to remember. So either we all bring laptops maybe, or we record as a group.
Cheryl?
Well, I think the visual of a big one, when I've used with groups, is that everybody can see what's up there. With the laptop, everybody can.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, if you have little colored sticky notes, somebody that's an introvert that may not speak up could write something down and put it up you know, maybe at the end or something. So I'm just,
Yeah, so I think most of you have been in situations where you asked to write something on a sticky note, and I'll just allow you to decide if you want to use it, but I will have sticky notes there for you to use.
okay.
It just occurs to me that the posters and pens only work if you have an easel or a wall. And if you're in the middle of the room, you're going to have an easel. So Paul, I think they have them at the Cameron Park. I think I may have seen them, but let's look into that and make sure we can bring at least 2 or 3. We have 9 groups. Some will be in breakout rooms and some will be near walls, but just in case people need an easel, we'll see if we can have some there.
And you know, Ken, when I've done this in a big room, if it was, you said you had big round tables.
Yeah.
You can actually put that post note on the big round table and people are gathered around. I think
Okay.
every leader could probably be creative in how to make it visible to everyone.
Okay, great. And then if you save those posters and or take a picture of it or save it, again, just send it my way or give it to Paul at the end. That would be, and just make sure you put the group name at the top so I know that it came from education, not government or whatever. Okay, so at 2 o'clock, the convening will be complete and participants will not be coming back together. They just will be able to leave. And so I just wanted you to know that so that you're not wondering, are we supposed to take people back to the big room or stay here to do some final thing? And I, having done a couple of these convenings before in El Dorado County years ago, it was logistically much better just to allow groups to finish at the end of the day and head to their cars. And then just the last thing I'll say is that our hope is if we get the mini grant that or the grant we're applying for, that these groups will be able to apply for mini grants to support that the work that they might do, say with Living Room Conversations or Braver Angels or Crucial Learning and any other organizations that can help facilitate. And that's why one of the questions was, and I realized I hadn't mentioned mini grants to you, who might be involved in writing the application for a mini grant? We won't know about the availability of mini grants until December, but if we don't get that grant, the foundation is, I think, committed to trying to find other funds that could be used to support convenings, say within the government group or the education group or within a school district or within public safety. Mary? Oops. You're muted still. Oops, I'm trying to read Mary. Can't hear Mary. Still muted, I think, Mary.
Yeah, I
There
know.
you go.
Something happened. My screen just went black. It came back. So it's
Okay.
probably internet. You gave us a great overview of the beginning and the end. Could you give us a little taste of the middle? And that'll help us see how the day, if you just in a short amount of time that you have.
Yeah, I will. I could actually,
Or you could send that to us.
let me just say a couple things about it. There's going to be just sort of a welcoming opening remarks. A few people from the audience, like Brian and a couple other people that Paul and I selected, are going to just stand up very briefly and say why they think this is an important thing. So, and then we're going to do this activity I mentioned before, which is illustrating a point that many people in this work are acutely aware of, and I'm sure all of you are, and it sort of reinforces the idea of contact theory, which is this one-on-one conversation that Amanda Ripley talks about, and we're going to hear from her later in the day via video, of how important it is to get to know one another personally by talking about what you like to do when you're not working, what you like about the county, living in the county. And that will sort of demonstrate the importance of doing that. We're going to see a short clip, which, by the way, I meant to mention to you, we have a website, and it's bridgingdivides-eldorado.org. And I'm going to stop the sharing of this for a minute here. On the homepage, you will see a short clip from a guy named Pete Peterson from Pepperdine University, who's been doing this work for quite a long time. And I've known him for a bit. He put me in touch with Joan. And he did a wonderful interview with me talking about whether a community like El Dorado County could come together and bridge its divides. And he's very optimistic and offered some really great advice. And we're going to be hearing from him for about 7 minutes in a video. After the activity you do in the morning with the reflecting on the divides and how they affect you, I'm going to be leading one that has to do with listening. And it's again one-on-one. What people will do is person A will have 3 minutes to share something with person B that they feel passionate about. And it can be about anything, controversial, whatever you want it to be. Person B's job is to listen and ask clarifying questions and to do your best not to let on whether you agree or disagree through body language or anything you say. And then person A gets to figure out if they have any idea whether person B agreed with them or didn't agree with them. And they get to reflect, both people reflect a little bit on what it was like to be a listener, where you weren't able to say, oh, I agree, or nod your head, or roll your eyes, all the things that we typically do when we're listening to people or trying to listen, but actually are in our own heads thinking about what we want to say rather than listening. And speakers who do this often say it was so nice to be able to speak for 3 minutes. And the person I was speaking to did nothing other than ask clarifying questions and show interest and was really listening. It was kind of refreshing. And then we'll reverse that, and then the other person gets to do it. And it's a really sort of fun, interesting listening exercise to reinforce that depolarizing skill. And then Carlos and Mary, do you want to say a little bit about an activity you're going to do after lunch at this point?
Carlos, do you want me to? You want to?
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay. One thing everybody needs to know is this is going to be a taste of an activity. It's kind of scary for us to do it in a very short amount of time. Many of you are educators or in workplaces where you understand the idea of a fishbowl. So there'll be one group in the middle, one group on the outside. We're going to just do it with a few volunteers, and Ken and Carlos and I are going to work out the details. But basically, Ken has given us a topic, and this is not a debate. So we're going to have 2 ideas that they are going to support, and they'll share why is our policy or idea good for our company, and it'll be specific, but we're working out those details. And then what's so powerful that's done in Braver Angels is you rarely, if ever, talk about the other side. You reflect on your own side. So if I tell you, I'm doing pickleball now for the first time. If my whole policy thing is why pickleball is the best sport on the planet, I would share that. And then I would share what concerns or unintended consequences or whatever is there with my own ideas. So we are not doing pickleball, we're doing a real life problem. But the reflection of the humility it takes to say what's bad about my ideas or what concerns do I have about my own ideas is where there's really a bridge between people on opposite sides. And when they listen to ideas, a lot of times people have preconceived ideas of each side, and all of you are in the role of stuff like this. So I feel like you already know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so we're going to work out the kinks, but just be forewarned, we're instead of a group of 8 and 8 or whatever the group is, we're just going to have a few volunteers on each side of an idea and just show how the process goes.
And
And it's
just going
not
to add this. I was just going to say, Mary, that early in the day, I'm going to stand up and say, we're going to be doing an activity later in the day. We want all of you to think about this scenario. And the scenario, I'm going to give you the brief version of it, is that your organization, it might be your agency, your business, your school, is woefully understaffed. And the reason it's understaffed is too many people are leaving and you can't find enough high quality replacements. So the idea that's been floated is we're going to offer performance bonuses to keep people and signing bonuses for people we hire. And the volunteers we want to come up would be 2 that think that's a wonderful idea, or at least they're open, they think it has real promise, and 2 that are very worried about it and don't think it's a good idea or worried about it.
And what Carlos and I are clarifying with you is what I realized is, let's just say you have reds and blues together talking about climate change. It wouldn't be, I'm for climate change, I'm against climate change. It would be, these are my ideas toward this problem. So we're going to pose it like, how do we retain and recruit people because of this declining in employment? And then have people who believe that bonuses are the way to go, and maybe people who believe that you need to change the culture or the working conditions or something. Because when I proposed that idea to you, I realized I set up a debate. I'm for bonuses, I'm against bonuses, and the fishbowl is not a debate. So that's why Carlos and I
Okay.
wanted to talk to you
Yeah,
about.
yeah, you and I are going to stay on after. So anyway, that's roughly what the activity is going to be like. And I'm glad you asked me to fill all of you in. And so I think you have a pretty good sense of what is going to happen. And I just want to open it up before we close out. Just any comments or questions or concerns that you want to share about the whole event or about your role as a host facilitator. Cheryl?
Yes, I just was curious how, like, I know how we found out about the event, but that there is going to be a variety of people that may show up. I'm just kind of curious how people were, how it was publicized or invited. Is it just all invitations, or it's just publicized to a public? What was the process for gathering?
Oh, you want to speak to that?
Well, then initially it was identifying the sectors. And once we identified the sectors, it was a group of people thinking about, well, who needs to be invited, at least to this initial convening. So it was primarily invitation only. There was at least one sector after the word got out that self-invited a few people, but for the most part, it was by invitation only. But there was a purposeful attempt to have people on all sides in those sectors show up at the event, as opposed to having just a blue table or a red table. We want the mixture, we need the diversity, we need the inclusion. So that's how it was done. And the planning group was primarily responsible for identifying the folks in each sector.
Other comments, questions before we?
And there was on the chat, there was are we going to know the list of people in each sector? Yes, we already have them identified by sector, and there will probably be, well, we will definitely have lists so that when we get to the point of breaking into sectors for at least the activities on the back end, that, you know, that group will be self-identified, and they will be at tables initially. So they'll know who's there and be able to introduce themselves, et cetera.
I did have one other thing I meant to tell all of you. I was going to say it, I will say it at the event too, so everyone understands. There will be a film crew at the event, and we are interviewing people prior to the event about their kind of reflections on the divides, kind of what that first activity that you'll be leading, just to be able to capture it in video. And And then as they arrive at the event, there will be people coming around with cameras. If what people need to know is that if we pick up anyone saying things in a small group meeting about how the divides have affected them, they should know that we will come back to them later if we decide to use that footage and we picked up their words, and make sure that they're comfortable with us keeping it in there. The other thing you can remind people when you're facilitating these groups is if there's a camera that comes up, is filming something and someone's talking, all they have to do is put their hand up and say, "I'd prefer that you not be videotaping right now," and they know what that is about, and they will go somewhere else. But there's two layers of safety there. One is anything we pick up where people's words are being recorded, we will check that with them later, which may be a year from now, because we're going to track this process over time to see how what sort of progress is being made. So we won't know what the documentary looks like for quite some time. But the other thing people can do is just say, I'd prefer you not be filming what I'm saying, and they will happily go somewhere else. So any final comments, questions? All right, well, thank you so much for being part of and being here today. And let me just see if there's any messages that I haven't read. Joan, you said Sean is going to be coming? Is Joan still there? Maybe Joan's gone.
Joan
That's great.
stepped out. She said goodbye to
Joan left.
Okay. Can you go over the leader of the group? Tab, that was your question. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. What did you mean by that?
When you went back to the slide, I saw that I didn't see where we were supposed to get them to self-select a leader. But when you went back to the slide, that
Okay. Are you talking about the sector leaders that you're going to identify?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's just someone who's going to be the contact person, sort of the champion for the group, at least going forward for a little while. And it's someone that Paul and I can reach out to and connect with, just so we know what's going on. Oh,
and it may be that there will be in a sector 1 or 2 or 3 leaders that self-identify as being the kind of the people corralling.
That would be great. Yeah. Tina, thanks for bringing ESOL. Giant Post-its. So Nicodemus was saying sometimes it's helpful to have people brainstorm their ideas and write it down on Post-its. So I'll let you do that. The Post-it notes will be there. Nicodemus, did you want to say something, or did you have to go? You was waving, you had to go. Lunch is being provided, by the way. Sorry, I'm getting to all these so late. I didn't see the messages of it. And Tina, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to know whether you had enough facilitators for each of the different groups, or whether maybe you had more than you need in one group and it would be useful to have somebody move to another group, or do you need help recruiting more hosts or facilitators?
We have enough facilitators for the second big activity at the end of the day. I'm not sure we have enough. If you divide the group, we have 120 people coming, divided by 5, that's maybe 20 some odd facilitators, and I don't know that we have enough, and so we either have to get more or have instructions for what happens if you meet in 4 and you don't have a facilitator, and that will be on some instructions what to do if there's not a person that has a green. You'll all have green stickers on your name tags, but if you don't have a green sticker person with you, what should you do? But do you have some ideas about who else might be able to facilitate?
Well, I mean, if they don't have to be in El Dorado County, I may know some in El Dorado County. I know some other coaches in El Dorado County. Most coaches have facilitation skills as well. So I could look into possibly recruiting, but I also have multiple areas that I could support based on my experience: business,
Okay.
government,
I'll keep
healthcare
that in
and-
mind. I think we have to just expect that we're going to be short on facilitators when the group breaks up into groups of 5. And I just have to have something, say something and have something written on the sheet they all pull out that says, here's what you do. You know, read the conversation agreements and here's your first question. And I think people can figure that out. But thanks for raising the question. Okay, I'm gonna just see if there's anything else. Will we get a full agenda of the day? Yes, you will, Tab. That's going to be going out. Trying to,
Next week.
yeah, well, it's going to be printed next week. I was wondering if we're going to send it, when we're going to send it, but you will get one at some point.
So I think everybody who's invited, including this group, will get electronic copies of agendas, et cetera.
Maybe we can have a parking lot if they have additional information to add. Add public safety to the sectors.
I think in your first slide, you didn't have public safety listed.
Oh, okay, okay, I'll check that. And I think I've addressed all of the yes, each person will have a name tag and they'll have a color code that corresponds. And then on the table, I've got them sitting right over here, these little easels, tiny easels with a big card that will indicate education, government. So you'll be able to find that easy, and there will be a sticker on that that corresponds to the color code on the name tag. Okay. All right, I think we've got it. So thank you, everyone. See you all on the 29th.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone.
You want
Mary,
us-
you and Carlos and
Yeah.
I are going to stay on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you want us there before 9:30? I know registration's 9:30. I mean, to help in any way?
Yeah, if you can get there, that was actually in the document I'm sending. If you can possibly get there when registration starts at 9:30, it would be great because you can meet people in your group. So that would be terrific, and the room will be open. There'll be refreshments for you then.